Nostalgia de la Luz is a 2010 documentary film by filmmaker Patricio Guzman. Guzman is a renowned Chilean director who frequently confronts Chile's political climate and specifically the struggle under Pinochet's regime. That regime would be a almost 17-year reign of terror backed by the U.S. after the 1973 coup d'etat they led against leftist President Allende. The regime left at least 3,000 people dead or missing and forced at least 200,000 Chileans into exile, Guzman being one of them. Born in 1941 in Santiago, Chile, he was one of those sent in exile shortly after the coup, having been the head of documentary film in Chile's state production company under Allende. Having been detained in the infamous National Stadium, which held as many as 40,000 political prisoners, Guzman, one of the lucky few, got out and fled to Europe, where he was able to continue making films. Flash forward almost 40 years, Guzman is no stranger to confronting the Pinochet regime and its legacy through film, but never through a lens like that of Nostalgia de la Luz. Here, Guzman details the lasting impacts of the Pinochet regime through a more metaphysical lens. He presents the search for the disappeared alongside the search for humanity's origins in the stars, through testimonies from both astronomers and the women who searched the Atacama Desert for the remains of the missing loved ones. I would argue that the nature of the film is inherently decolonial because it follows the indigenous epistemology that refuses to separate human beings from the earth, acknowledging them as one. To study the origins of the galaxies is to study the origins of humanity. Colonialism seeks to conceal indigenous truth and histories, and the action of fighting to uncover truth and injustice upsets the colonial project. Within the Atacama Desert, the main setting of the film, conditions are so dry that everything becomes preserved, almost mummified, serving as a literal window to the past, but also as a place of limbo, where things seem frozen in time. These conditions also make it perfect for the study of the stars, also a window to the very distant past. Nonetheless, to study the stars is to study our own ancestors, and the search for the origins of either becomes a spiritual experience. However, we see the way that astronomers are praised for looking into the past, even millions of years ago, but the women looking for traces of their missing loved ones are told to forget about it because it's in the past. The conspiracy of silence regarding the dictatorship is still upheld in Chile. Guzman discusses indigenous pre-Columbian art in the Atacama Desert and how colonialism paved the way for Pinochet's reign of terror. The living quarters of the exploited indigenous miners became Chacabuco, the Pinochet regime's largest concentration camp. The military barely had to make adjustments as the mine was already so prison-like. Another aspect of indigenous teaching in the film is the importance of oral tradition to carry history and truth, especially when that history is being actively rewritten by the state. Those imprisoned in Chacabuco would meet secretly to listen to the astronomical teachings of a fellow prisoner. This act of community and sacred practice, learning about the stars, provided a sense of freedom, perhaps respite in the knowledge that they once came from the stars and to the stars they would one day return. This idea of eternal rebirth, also a prevalent belief in many indigenous cultures, is a common theme in Nostalgia de la Luz. Close-up images of a surface of a star are juxtaposed with close-ups of human bone fragments. Guzman forces us as a people to acknowledge our collective history as stardust, as well as collective atrocity, not only in allowing a genocide to occur, but in allowing its state-sponsored cover-up. In the end, those at the heart of the battle for truth are the victims themselves. Those at the front lines have always been the mothers, sisters, and wives, and Guzman reminds us this by prioritizing their stories, allowing the viewer to know them intimately, to feel their loss. For now, the only physical evidence of their loved ones lies unidentified in one of the thousands of boxes of the remains of the disappeared. But when the women searching in the Atacama Desert look up at the night sky, perhaps they feel the presence of those who they've lost, within the eternal current that binds all of us. In Nostalgia de la Luz, Patricio Guzman presents the ideological crossroads of modern Chile. On one side is the astronomical belief based on indigenous epistemologies that there is no present moment, the past and the future eternal as one. On the other side of the coin, we have the actions of the Chilean state, attempting to completely erase and forget the atrocities of the past, the same efforts taken to try and conceal the horrific impact of settler colonialism.